friends, it's Shade. I am a Christian life coach and I am a recovering people pleaser. And I'm sharing on this channel my journey from being a people pleaser to being a stronger, more assertive, really a more centered person. And I know, like, as I've talked through my journey, I've met a lot of people who are like, oh yeah, I go through that too. And so I thought, okay, I've read a lot of this and I've worked through, and I'm still working through a lot of the things that go with being a people pleaser and overcoming it and really digging deep inside and pulling out those roots of the things that cause us to be people pleasers. And so in this video, I wanted to share some of the ways that people pleasing showed up in my life. It's a really subtle problem because you're not an obvious basket case. In fact, a lot of characteristics of people pleasers appear to be good things. But then if it goes on long enough, in enough ways, it's very damaging to you as a person, damaging to the people around you. And so it's a really serious problem, but it can be very hard to point out what it looks like. So I've been working on compiling just all the different characteristics of a people pleaser, and each characteristic will have its own separate video. But I wanted the first video to be what it looked like in my life, just to get a little personal and get this started off. So I listed 12 ways that people pleasing look like in my life. And I'm just going to go through them really quickly. One was, for me, people pleasing didn't show up outside of my significant relationship. So if you met me, say, at church or in a classroom setting or in a work setting, I wasn't much of a people pleaser in any of those settings. Like you couldn't get me to do something I didn't want to do, or, I never felt like a lot of stress. I'm like, look. But within my significant relationships, so within my marriage or my children, or my close friends, my family of origin, within my people pleasing showed up in my significant relationships. And so this is why it's really hard to diagnose some of these things and really pull it out. And I think that's why it went on so long in my life, was because, it didn't show up just in general. So, people on the outside couldn't say, hey, I think you have a problem here. So within my significant relationships, I would let other people's moods and behavior control my mood, control my feelings. And I would try to control the feelings and moods and behavior of others. So I would try to get people to do the right thing. I was always trying to get them to do the right thing, feel the right thing. If they didn't feel a certain way about something, even though my view of it was probably biblically right. So say we need to, let's say, give, okay, because the problem showed up even with giving. Okay, we really ought to give. We ought to give more. And I felt good about giving. And then another person, within my significant relationship feels, oh, well, I don't need to give anything. I can just keep everything to myself. Well, the truth is, another person has a right to the way they feel about giving, even though the Bible says that they have a right to do whatever they want. But what I would try to do is then try to control and change the other person to do the right thing. And so that's how people pleasing showed up for me. And it does show up that way. It turns into control, because the boundaries between, okay, this is this person, and if they want to, live their life that way, they have a right, but I also have a right to live my life the way I believe. So those boundaries were not very clear. So that was one, letting other people's moods and behaviors and feelings control my moods and behaviors and vice versa. The second way it showed up was that I was easily pressured by those closest to me. I really, just hated conflict. So anyone within my significant relationships who was good at manipulating or good at twisting things or good at putting pressure in just the right places, I would easily cave, within those relationships. 3, I was always trying to fix people's problems. Always trying to make things better, always trying to fix, always trying to clean up messes for other people. Number 4, I would constantly interpret my interactions with people in the light of, okay, what does that mean about me? What does that say about me with what they did? How does that feel about me? What does that say about our relationship? And I was constantly interpreting and reinterpreting my relationships based on something that happened. And I hope that's clear. But hopefully when I get into more details about these, it'll become a little more clear. 5, I was overly accommodating of other people's wants. So if the person wanted that, I'd be like, I would do whatever I could to make what people wanted happen. I always wanted them to be happy. I want people to be happy. I was overly conscientious in not wanting to bother or inconvenience those around me. I hated asking for help, asking for my needs to be met, because it was just always It was always about other people. It was always about other people. Life was about other people. Life was about making other people happy, making sure other people had what they wanted. And so direct communication of my needs was, was difficult. 7, hated conflict, hated confrontation. I did it, but usually I wouldn't do it well because I hated it so much. Whenever I had to do it, I was pushed to the wall to do it. Then it was like I would wait until I was backed up to the wall and then come out with, oh, okay, let it all out, because I waited until I was backed up to the wall to actually do that. So I would find myself trying to figure out ways to motivate people in a pleasant way to do the right thing when they were completely determined not to do that, no desire to do the right thing. But then I'd be over there, be like, oh, how do I motivate them? How do I find a nice way to get them to want to do the right thing? No. Some people just don't want to do the right thing. All right, so that was 7. 8, I already mentioned this. So when I did have to confront someone, sometimes it would be too much because I didn't do it when it needed to be done at the right time. 9, the fear of conflict and confrontation would cause me to isolate or withdraw when I shouldn't. So, and when I say isolation, I am a social butterfly. I'm not a person who would hide away from people or be in my room in a hermit in closet, all that. Not like that, but just, it's hard to describe it. It's an emotional thing. And that's why people pleasing it goes so deep. It takes a person who is really ready to say, hey, I'm really ready to deal with my issues and to look at it, to admit these things, because a lot of them are internal. People can't see it. People can't point at it. So I guess I'm at that place. So I would say on the inside, I would isolate, but it was more of an internal isolation rather than external isolation. So you wouldn't see me isolating. I could be right there in front of you, but I would be isolating. Or I could be in a group of a ton of people, but already have made a decision about where those relationships were at and not being willing to engage in those relationships in a real way anymore. 10, I would ignore my needs to meet the needs of others. So it's one thing to want to meet the needs of others, right? That's okay. That's the one I mentioned before. But now this is when there were two things on the table, mine would always drop off. It didn't matter. And this happened even in relationships that were not significant, like friends and church and stuff. It'd be like, oh, okay, I would drop some of my own personal needs to meet the needs of other people. And, doing that once in a while is not a big deal, but it's a problem when you see it as a consistent pattern in your life. And this is where, once again, as a people pleaser, you have to come out of denial. Like, nobody can come to you and say, hey, you are doing this, because nobody knows your needs. Nobody knows what's going on in your heart and in your life. Nobody knows what you need. So unlike, say, paranoid schizophrenia or, any number of other problems that a person can have, or even like a bad temper, like if a person has uncontrolled anger, that's obvious to other people. Somebody can see that and say, hey, you have uncontrolled anger, you need to do something about that. But little things like you're always giving up what you want on the inside and doing what the other people don't know that you gave something up when you said yes to them. They have no idea. So I encourage you, people pleasers, please, if you think any of this applies to you as you watch this channel, take a good long look at yourself. Nobody can do this for you. You have to do it for yourself. Okay, so I would ignore my own needs to meet the needs of others. 11, I would just withdraw from relationships because I wouldn't like confrontation. I wouldn't like to go up to the person and say, hey, you did that and that sucked and I really didn't like it. It'd be like, okay, well, they did that, but it was such a tiny thing. So I would minimize the problem or what the person did that I didn't like and be like, well, they did that and it was wrong, but it was such a little thing. And I really just don't want to go up to them and say that they did that, because then that would look so stupid. So I'm just going to let it go. But I would let it go, but I wouldn't let it go. So then, and there would just be that little space in that relationship. It would just be right there, and that was it, The relationship would still be there, but there would be that gap and it would be different, at least on my part. And sometimes the other people wouldn't even notice that it was different. But here I am, laying it all out on YouTube. Okay, and then 12, I was also, and also that withdrawal led to being reluctant to really end relationships that were really toxic. So if I was in a relationship with someone or in a friendship with someone and that person was just really, really negative person, not a bad person, but yeah, a bad person, a person that you really shouldn't be hanging out with, I would be reluctant to end that, because the process of ending a relationship or ending a friendship would be too painful. So, that reluctance, a more healthy or godly person, which, and when I'm doing these in more detail later, I'm going to really look at the Word of God and the Bible and what it says about all these and how we should deal with them, because the Bible has a lot to say about being a people pleaser. That reluctance to end a toxic relationship would then keep me stuck with people around me that weren't really serving what God wanted in my life. So I think these are the major ways. I know there are others, but can't go into 100 of them. These are some of the ways that people pleasing showed up in my life. And it's one thing, everybody has a little bit of a people pleaser in them. 100% of human beings do. But for most people, well, it's like one or two things that they do here and there. But when you have a lot of these characteristics starting to accumulate in your life, there's no way it's not affecting you. There's no way it's not affecting your spiritual life. There's no way it's not affecting your relationships, your career, your ministry, So as I go through the series of characteristics of people pleasers, I hope you will join me and look at all of these and ask questions and come out of your own denial and make some changes that can really, really serve you and help you serve others and serve God better. So thanks for joining me. God bless.